So one of the things I watched, the sort of due diligence, was Dr. Snuggles.
Oh,
I watched
blimey.
an episode. I thought I should watch an episode because it come up in one of the interviews I read.
Yeah.
And I thought I should at least know what it was. It was quite weird.
Was the one about the river?
It was the one about the river because
Yeah.
that was the one mentioned, the remarkably fidgety river.
Yeah.
It's like it was written on drugs.
Well, we were young and mad, you know.
And on
Probably
drugs?
not really. Douglas and I weren't. It was more beer, I think.
Okay. Written on beer.
But I mean, it's the thing is when you meet somebody that you've got a similar imaginative pathway, you know, just go off of the
Spark each other off. There was a river like a snake. It was quite interesting. A river like a snake. Whale ferries, where they're getting in their mouths. Digging holes in the sea. It wasn't the usual kids' fare. It's interesting.
But kids love anything.
I'm sure.
The madder,
I
the
wonder whether
better,
they could.
really.
It could be picked up by Netflix as a reboot. I don't know what the. So you picked that up mid-season, did you, or mid-season 2?
Yeah, we were just.
Because I looked at a few episodes and then wanted a guarantee that you'd written.
I can't remember how we got the job. I mean, Douglas and I were working as radio producers, and we got this call, and we did a lot of moonlighting in the evenings. You know, we sat and wrote it in the BBC offices.
Right.
Yeah, I was always very amused that I speak a bit of Dutch now, but then I didn't, and so the fact that the producer was called Joop Fish, and his secretary was called Veronica Plink was just too good to miss, really.
How comes you speak Dutch now? How did that come about?
Spreek een beetje Nederlands. My son's a musician. He lives in the Netherlands. Yeah.
So, thanks for coming.
Dave, what an honour.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, I've grown up with all of your shows in a way that actually, I was thinking on the way down, it's impossible for TV shows to hit as big as they used to hit. They just can't because things are so scattered out. But not the 9 o'clock news, Hitchhiker, I mean, all of those things were like bombshells that everybody would talk about the next day. And I can't think of anything like that. I don't think it's even possible to do that now because there were fewer channels and fewer distractions. But
it's so fractured, isn't it? And nobody under 30 watches linear, you know, terrestrial
there's
television.
pockets of things, even like Succession, which I loved. Did you watch that? Which was
I
amazing.
Seen it. My wife saw all of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. But I saw the viewing figures. Like, it was tiny, really. It's just like a few pockets of whatever kind of people.
Well, you think of the traction that late night American talk shows get. I mean, it's 1 million people, maybe.
Yeah,
you know,
it's nothing. But they were genuinely big, massive cultural shifts. And obviously, all of them, as we'll sort of mention a couple as we go. But so it's a way, way bigger honour. I just wanted to honour you really on that. I presume you've done a podcast before. I didn't listen to any because I would hear some of the questions and think either I should answer that or I shouldn't answer that, and it will get in the way. So I thought, I know you've done one with Rob Brydon. I don't know whether you've done hundreds of these things.
I've done lots, over the years.
Obviously, I know you've got some experience in this area.
It's nice. What I like about podcasts is that they are. It's not they're uncurated. They're curated by somebody this is your personal taste.
Yeah.
This is what I like.
Yeah.
So you get truthfulness, which is the way I used to work as a broadcaster. They hired you because we think you can do this. What is it you think I can do? Well, do stuff you like. What I like. That's it. If you don't like it, then what guarantee is anyone?
Yeah.
But now it's the other way around. Is you don't know anything. You know, you're not a real person because you're white and middle class and old.
Yeah.
All that stuff. But actually, it's the greatest honour you can pay to the audience is this is what I love. I give it to you.
Yeah.
And then if you're lucky and you have a sort of shared sense of humour, you really can hit the spot because it's about truthfulness and about showing a side of yourself, I think. I think that's what great work is. It's somehow you're giving something for yourself which has a universality that connects with people in some way.
And did you feel that when you were first hired by the BBC? Because I know nothing about that, but my impression would be that you had to fit into their world and they wouldn't... What were you, 23 when you were hired?
22.
22, which is unbelievable. Unbelievably young.
It was mad, and I didn't want to do it. I was a writer and a performer. I'd been on Radio 4 in this 6-part show we did. So I was in the writer's room, and the deputy head of the department comes in and says, "Do you want to be a producer?" And I go, "No, not really." Because in those days they'd been in radio in the '60s, and they were all had three-barreled names. Alistair Scott Johnson, we're in town tonight with Alistair Scott Johnson, and they all wore tweed and everything, and it was like they'd all been in the war.
So what did they see in you?
I've no idea.
When you were that young, not wearing tweed and only
I'd never produced or directed anything really, and I hadn't.
But they must have spotted something at that early age.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe because I had a tie. Might have been that. But I don't know. But that's the way it used to work in creative stuff, and I'm sure it's true with you in advertising in the early days. Is people look you in the eye, don't they? Think this person means it in a way you can't fake. And I had some experience. I'd done several shows as a writer, so that they obviously knew I had I guess a sense of humour. So I don't know, and it was like most things in my life have been a complete accident. I didn't ask for it, I didn't push for it, I didn't do an interview. I've never passed a formal interview, I don't think, for anything.
Have you not? How did they know you had a sense of humour? Were you a big joke maker, talker, teller?
Well, I'd been in again completely by accident. My girlfriend was in Footlights at Cambridge, and she said, "Why don't you have a go?" I was a college review person, and like Douglas ran the review the next door college, and that was a cool thing to do. And my girlfriend persuaded me to have a go at Footlights, so I did. And then the BBC Radio came to see it, and they offered us a one-off from the show, and then another one, and then a series of 6. So by that time I'd done eight shows that had gone out on Radio 4, and they got good figures,
And did that Footlights background, was that a help or a hindrance? Because the history of it and the style of it, I don't know whether that's a platform. Whoops, here comes our coffee.
Are we all right for Mike, George? Are we?
Absolutely, yeah.
You're adjusting for me being...
Black coffee? Tell you what,
that's
this way, and then we'll be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Biscuit and everything, amazing.
That's the works. It's
this is
Oscar-winning.
This is the top place.
Oscar-winning play. They won an Oscar last year. This place for Zone of Interest. Did you watch Zone of Interest?
No, I heard about it. It's who wrote
Jonathan
it?
Glazer.
That's right.
Yeah, it's good. It's
because I used to know Jonathan in the old days a little bit.
Did you?
Yeah, because he was in Limelight, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Limelight,
yeah.
Could see he was going places.
Could you?
Very, very good.
Yeah, he's done all his films here. He used to do all his commercials here. In fact, the first ever commercial they did the sound to was the Guinness Surfer ad.
Oh, amazing.
That was they were working and moonlighting on that before they started this.
Amazing.
So, what was I going to ask?
Footlights, yeah.
Footlights. Because it's so famous and it's produced so many people, is that baggage helpful or a hindrance? Do you feel like you have to fit into a certain thing, or was it just a platform to leap from?
Okay, well, the thing is, what Footlights historically has been is an extraordinary filtration system, all right? So there are about 10,000 undergraduates at any one time, or there were at Cambridge when I was there. There are 8 people in the May Week Review. Obviously, not all 10,000 want to be comics, but a lot of people would like to have a go. Footlights is famous. A lot of people go to Cambridge because of Footlights. And it's an intensely competitive thing by a series of what they call smokers through the year, where you audition, and if you're good enough, you get a part, and everybody from the club comes and watches you. And you are, I mean, it's undeniable. If you're somebody who can stand up in front of 100, 200 people and get big laughs, you get the best people that are available in the year. And the baggage is annoying. It's more annoying as a director, because I would, do a lot of casting when I was shooting ads, maybe 40 actors a day sometimes. And then you'd find someone who was really, really good, like Henry Naylor, for example, who played Boff in the early Barclaycard.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And indeed Ben Miller, who went on to become Boff in the movies, the Johnny English movies. And both of those, I thought, at last I found a genuine working class bloke who's like authentic.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they went to Cambridge. It's just really annoying. And the truth is, Dave, that over the years, there are 3 schools, particularly of comedy, where you pretty much, if that person doesn't belong to one of those three schools, it's quite unusual, and those are Footlights, Mike Leigh, and Ken Campbell. Actors who work with those people they're just of a different order. They know how to do comedy which is authentic, which is dry, which is incredibly funny, but you can't really, if you turn the sound down, you can't even tell Jim Broadbent's being funny, or, you know, there's a sort of particular thing. And certainly in advertising, you know, I do a few voiceovers. Brilliant training for voiceovers because you're flexible. Footlights people are flexible. They can do lots of different things. They can be straight, they can be funny, and so on. Whereas a lot of actors are quite, you know, they're looking over the, yes, darling, so what do you want? You want a little faster, you say? Yes, well, I'll do it a little faster then. Yeah. There's a sort of classically trained acting. You know, it's great for formal theatre, not so great for something which is a bit, we'll try it a completely different way, you know. Those people are unusual who can do that, I think, and Footlights is very, very good for that. And of course, it's irksome when you know, when you're hanging around the BBC bar and people get a bit pissed and they go, "Well, it's easy for you, isn't it? You're middle class and you went to Cambridge," as if you know everybody who goes, to get to Cambridge is easy. Yeah. It's not. You don't. Yeah. There isn't just a sort of hotline to it, you know, a fast channel. You've got to work hard and not everybody, of course, who goes to Cambridge is successful. So, but you get over that. I am who I am. I'm not. I've got used to not pretending to be anything I'm not. You know.
So, what would you imagined your career to be, or what did you want it to be when you were at Footlights or leaving?
I wanted to be David Frost. To be perfectly honest, I saw myself as a presenter kind of person in a sort of slightly comic setting. But I was a big admirer of Frosty right to the end of his life.
God, that's an unusual person, I would imagine. I've read lots of bad things about him by all sorts of people, but
yeah, you all the gossip. But you actually talk to somebody who knows him. Yeah, they'll all say he's a really good guy. You know, he's very loyal to his friends. He's very smart. You know, of course, you know, nobody's without blots on their escutcheon. But basically, he's one of those people who is a lot nicer than he's represented in the gossip columns, I guess. But
presumably you would have seen the Frost Report and liked what was the fact that he was in control and making funny remarks?
I don't know. I suppose
his general vibe.
Again, you know, he was from the generation before me, the sort of the 10 years before me, the Pythons and all those guys, that lot. And it's that. What I like about comedy is, well, first of all, I think the reason I'm good at what I've done as a producer is that in my gap year, because my dad was in the Navy, I've travelled enough, thank you very much, we've been everywhere. Yeah. And I needed money, so I got a job as a tea-boy for an Essex builder, and I had the best year, you know.
Oh, yeah, I read that, yeah.
And because, you know, I was the long-haired lefty in the crew, you know, they were all proper old, you know, right-wing, Tory, working class, brilliant guys, incredibly funny. We all liked a few pints. And I was this long-haired, scruffy shoes, lefty bloke, you know. And it was a fantastic school, not just to learn to do tiling and plastering, because I got, you know, each time I learned to do something, rubbing down, you start with driving the van, all that. And then, but basically being in a working class environment every day for close on a year is, I say this sounds a bit weird, but I think for a person of my age and class, I'm not frightened of working class blokes because I was one. You know, I've done all that stuff.
Was that pre or post Cambridge?
Before.
Before. Yeah. So was that helpful in a weird way at Cambridge? Was there anything
helpful?
Well,
they basically made me think about politics in a different way because I thought, you know, I was a sort of lefty at a minor public school, and then you meet these very bright working class people, and you know I'd never really, you know, my mum had a cleaner. You meet the odd work, you know. My dad was in the Navy, so you met sailors, and when you're a little kid and all that, that's fine. But to actually know people as a friend, and somebody you went to the pub with every night, was different. And of course, it doesn't take you very long to realise the idea that merchant bankers and lawyers are more intelligent or professors are more intelligent than electricians and bricklayers is horseshit. It's just rubbish. And that has stayed with me to this day, which is it's so awful the education system doesn't find the smart people, doesn't give them the chance to be other than, not that obviously craft people are it's an amazing job, but that somehow that passing exams and being able to do Latin and stuff and being good at school makes you likely to be better at anything very much apart from being a corporate lawyer or a merchant banker, which are, let's face it, not the most societally useful jobs you can have. Nowadays it's management consultancy and all that kind of stuff.
So initially, you studied law. Did you go into law after?
No. I went up as a sort of self-righteous, left of centre person who wanted to defend the poor against the rich and, fight the evil corporations. And of course, if you turn up at Cambridge with that attitude, they think you're pathetic, that you have no idea. Law and justice have precious little to do with each other, and it's naive, and it's a set of rules that you have to learn, like mathematics. And so I clocked off pretty soon, which is why I've ended up where I am, because I worked very hard at university, but not at the law. I just scraped by each year. And when I left, I thought, well, I'll give it 6 months and see if, a year. So I'll give it a year. If I can't make it in some way in writing or performing, because I did a bit of straight acting as well, then I will, if I can't make it in a year, then I'll stop and go back and do, bar exams or be a solicitor or something like that.
Did that help you in comedy in any way, the law?
Yes.
Because there's quite a lot of comedians or comedy people would come up with
law.
law.
Yes, law and medicine particularly is the...
I wonder why that is. Is that because you have to look at a broader range of things? Or
I think for lawyers, law is a brilliant training for writing, because only this exact word will do. That's in a contract or in a statute. The other thing for me, in the kind of slightly, provocative stuff I've done, like Spitting Image or Not the 9 O'Clock News, I've never been sued for libel, which is pretty cool, because I actually understand exactly where the line is. The BBC did settle once with Reggie Bosanquet, but that's a longer story. But medicine, I think, who would want to cut up bodies and poke around in people's anuses and things like that? You've got to have a pretty black sense of humour to do it. I think the other people would probably be service people. People in the army have a very good sense of humour, because they have to have one, otherwise they'd weep,
All very regimented things, isn't they? It's interesting when you say about the precise word. I heard a podcast recently where Jerry Seinfeld was saying that all the comedians knew this one bloke who they would all ask, what's a funny fruit in this instance? What's the best number in it? It was all these very specific, and they'd say, this is the joke. What fruit should it be? And he'd go, pomegranate or whatever the thing is. And they'd all sort of agree and go, that is, 27 is the best number or whatever it is. It's just funny, the specifics of that. If you're not in that world, it seems...
No, well, okay, so this is where we get a bit weird. I mean, I think that, let me go at this slightly sideways. My great friend and film editor Ian Wheel always used to say, it's like music. We're writing music, but nobody's notated it. You can notate dance, you can write down a ballet, you can write down a symphony, but nobody's ever worked out how to write down a piece of film editing. But as you'll know this, when you get a cut right, it's undeniable, isn't it? It just, you take a wait. You struggle, you spend a whole day on it, and you just won't go to the length, or there's something wrong and you can't, and then suddenly you take out this, you put that one in there, you take out the first shot, and there it is. It's like, oh my God, it's numinous. So something's happened that it's suddenly fitted. And I think that there's then no argument about it. To me, it's not about me anymore. All you can ever take credit for, in my view, as a creative person, is turning up and doing things when you don't want to, and being diligent and doing your craft and so on. But genius, that comes from the sky. It's like writing a great song. It's It's not really anything to do with you anymore. And certainly frustrating, as a comedy person, particularly in advertising, if you're working with people who are not comedy specialists. It's one thing if you're working with other footlights people, who say Blackadder crew, everybody's done lots of comedy, so you're talking a common language. You still argue, still disagree violently, but you're talking peer-to-peer. If you're talking to a couple of guys who are, got a big break with a comedy ad because they've got an idea, and then you say, well, this isn't going to work, and they go, well, that's just your opinion. No, it's like the comedy plumber, your bullcock, mate. Well, I don't think it is my bullcock. Well, I'm sorry, I'm a plumber. Yeah. It's your bullcock. It's not the tap,
So would you face that then? Would you have that sort of...
That conversation all the time, yeah.
Would you, really? Because you would imagine if they would hire you, that's why they're hiring you.
Well, that isn't the... Well, it's like, why would you hire a famous comedian and then say, well, I don't agree with you?
Yeah. Exactly.
You're hiring Rowan Atkinson or Harry Enfield or Hugh Laurie because they're geniuses, and they're channeling something bigger than themselves. But it's an odd thing in that, particularly that milieu, is you would not tell Lester Bookbinder how to light a tomato. I mean, he was the great food director of my day. He knows how to spritz parsley, and that you wouldn't dream it. What he does is magic. You wouldn't tell Ridley Scott how to shoot an action sequence. He'd throw you off. But everybody thinks they have a sense of humour, and I get that. But I think my line's funnier than yours. Look, I'm not here. I'm not the writer. I'm not the performer. I'm not here even to take credit. It's your script. I'm just trying to make it happen for you, so that you want to say often, I'm here to make you rich and famous and get you a promotion. I don't have an angle here. I'm viewing it exactly as a plumber, with no side. There's no egotism here. It's just, look, do you see that bolt there? That's loose. And they go, well, I don't think it is loose. So it's a loose bolt, mate. Honestly, look, let me show you. Give me the wrench there. See there? See?
So how much of that spotting those loose bolts is learnt from when you're at the BBC, seeing how other plumbers work, and how much is a sort of instinctive?
Well, Dave, this is one of the big mysteries. It's like, first of all, what is comedy?
Yeah,
What's
I've got some questions about that.
Why is it there, and how does it work? And the thing is, over the years, from time to time, people have offered me a post as professor of comedy or whatever, and I say I can't do that because I don't know how it works. I know I can do it, but how? It's like you can't ask a songwriter, how do you write a song? Well, I don't know. It just comes to me. It's like asking, where do ideas come from? I know if you've been doing it as long as I have, professionally now for 50 years, it's like it sticks out a mile. And looking at, as I did, all those ads you sent me, many of which I haven't seen since they were made, it's a shocker.
Is it?
Well, in all sorts of ways, but the key thing is immediately the bum notes show out. It's like a musician. You think there's an ad I did with Billy Connolly for an obscure credit card called Goldfish that never reappeared again. I love Billy. He's an old friend, but it wasn't my choice for casting, and it was meant to be shot in Japan, but that's too expensive, and the research clearly showed that James Earl Jones was the right man for the job, but the agency, slightly fudged it because the client would not have to pay so much. And there's a line, I think it's 2 sentences in, where somebody's pushed for a funny line at the front, and it completely destroys the credibility of the whole of the rest of the film, which then picks up a bit. It's very dramatic and very beautiful, amazing setting in Iceland. But that's what I call the gangrenous toe syndrome. It's like you've got to nip that off or the whole body's going to collapse, And that was one of the early ones I watched of the enormous list. And you think, I knew I was right at the time. I knew, guys, I know, it's a funny line, but not there. Because you've got to believe that Billy Connolly is this magical sage in a strange place. If you do a funny gag there, people go, well, it's just Billy Connolly. And if you do that, the film won't work to the point where at the end people buy into the proposition, I might try that credit card. They sound really smart.
So of the commercials you used to do, how many would give you complete trust, do you think? How many agencies?
I think I've done. It's not to say one didn't, by and large, especially early on, when there were very few comedy directors, that they couldn't get Wayland or Graham Rose, then Lloydie would maybe step in because he's a bit new and he might, Anyway, the script isn't working. Nobody in town wants to do it, and give John Lloyd a go and see if he can pull something out of the fire. But at the beginning, because I got a rep for fixing stuff that wouldn't pass the BACC or any number of reasons, you did have a lot of say because people knew it was a rare skill. And then as time wore on, you were competing against, 3-10 other directors. Everyone had to do, pitches and storyboards.
Treatments and stuff.
And as you know, what happens is, if there isn't a firm person in charge who says, I want that person, and that's the person who's going to do it, you got committee stuff, and everybody's offended by this person. It all becomes a compromise, and so does the work. I've read your pieces on it. I mean, what the heck happened to advertising that, when you and I started in it, it was marvellous.
That's great.
You would go to British Television Advertising Awards, and just in one category, white goods or alcoholic drinks or whatever, there would be, 6 to 8 masterpieces. You think we don't stand a chance at this? Is like...
Yeah, it was very... People would genuinely applaud and be happy and laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, because looking at things, one of the ones I watched again, reminding myself this morning, was Phileas Fogg. They look like they said, can you shoot that and get back when it's done? They're so full of jokes, funny, not necessarily like... I can remember them coming out at the time, and they were not like anything else around them, and just funny. They just look like, I mean, I don't know, but they just look like they've handed it over. So
Stephen Dennis, obviously, did a lot for Stephen Dennis at BBH, and they became very close friends. And, they got that, I think. I mean, it's not to say we didn't have the odd spat, but really not, especially not Dennis. It's a thing that art directors, for some reason, why is it art directors are more open to innovation and change than writers? I think that's generally true in life, but the thing is, I think because so many of these ads I haven't seen for years and years and years, decades in some cases, but it's God's in the details. The basic idea of a Mexican bar where they went broke because the tortillas are now made in Medonsbury Road concept, but it's the detail. What's the guy having to eat? What's the fly doing? What happens to the chihuahua? Those things, and that's one of the things I noticed about some of the ads that I've forgotten. I did one very late on for McCain's oven chips. It was a very grandiose sort of Mary Poppins-y thing. Lots of people singing on the roof and nice casting in a kitchen, and shots of potatoes and all that. All those golden hour shot, all the tropes and all that. And I was just thinking, this is a good technical piece of work. We did it very cheaply. The CGI is well done, but it's all right. And then at the end, there's a cat on the roof, and it's my voice, and the cat goes, "I'm not a great fan of potatoes, but these are marvellous." And it tilts over into that. Yeah. That was fantastic. And that's the thing. If you've got a team who trust each other, and just give me a go. Let me go with it. Let me shoot it anyway, and then we'll discuss it in the cut. But if you've got suspicion and anger and resentment in the thing, you run the risk. It only takes such a tiny tilt the other way to make what could have been a masterpiece a disaster, and that's also happened to me as well. And of course the other way around, which is one of the very first series of Barclaycard, for example. We did 3 ads. It was such a scary thing. My producer managed to discover that she wasn't very well, and somebody else had to do it. But it was one shot in London, one in Moscow, just after the Berlin Wall came down. First crew into Red Square, and the other one was shot in Luxor in Egypt just before the Gulf War broke out.
Oh,
You know,
wow,
you think it's like scary stuff. But that, particularly the one in Luxor, there'd never been a film crew into the souk in Luxor.
Oh, wow.
And Pete Carr, our amazing location manager, got friendly with the local sheikh, and I don't know, maybe there was a backhander. We shot there, and of course nobody in the souk had ever seen a film crew, so we couldn't shoot because everywhere we went, all these little kids, jumping up and down in front of the shot. So we created a fake film crew, and that's what the agency people did.
To distract them.
Pete and John, the writers, and the agency producer, and all those people. They pretended to be a film crew, and they did it like a corny thing. The director was shouting and wearing leather
with
boots.
A megaphone. Yeah.
That's right, megaphones.
Yeah.
So we had that set up over there, which got all the people, and all the other stuff was shot from a van with a little hole in the back window, all done secretively. And that was such a happy shoot, because the shoots I've enjoyed most are when you look, you can't tell whose agency, whose client, and whose crew. You all become friends, and everyone carries all the boxes to the plane and all that. Yeah. When you've got that, it's when everybody becomes part of the same crew, you can do literally anything.
So who figured out how to do it that way? That's a very cunning way to get over that problem.
I don't know. It's because I think filmmaking is, I don't have any auteur either ambitions or pretensions, but I think it's a gestalt. A film crew is like when it works, is like a human being, so that the grip is the arms and hands, and the lighting director's the eyes, and the sound person's the ears, and they're working as one. And the director's really only just literally calling the shots. Really, you're just there. I often describe it as I'm the man on the back of the trireme beating the drum. I can't row. I can't even sail. I'm not even moving the tiller. I'm just making sure the beat's going at the same rate.
So how do you set that vibe up at the beginning of a shoot? You must sort of give that vibe out for that to happen, because a lot of directors are the opposite. They're like, I'm the most important person here, I'm the only one who knows how it all works.
On the whole, not good directors, in my experience. If you watch Scorsese working, you wouldn't even know he was there. He's sitting very quietly watching the monitor, because it's definitely the case. If you think directing's about you, you're very much mistaken. Directing, like any great creative work, is channeling the essence of everyone on the set. Not to say you don't sometimes have to stop things happening or, insist on things, but really you are like a songwriter channeling something larger than yourself, I think. And certainly I would say a thing that I've no idea how, but I'm quite good at creating a microculture, which is my sets are friendly. People make jokes, but that's taken seriously. We finish on time. We don't muck about. We muck about when there's time, and then.
And do you have any ways of imposing? Not imposing. It's the opposite of imposing it. But do you have ways of making sure that people feel like that, because they would have come from other sets and other ways of working, and you want them to get into your.
Well, you've got to have a great producer. In my case, Caroline for many years, and then Steve Gash, and they crewing up. You got people. There are no wankers on my set.
No
you've got
people.
Policy. No twats, and so everybody is taking their work seriously, but they've got a sense of humour. They trust the people. A film crew is what they call a flat hierarchy, in the sense that it's not pyramidal, so that the lighting director is not superior to makeup or costume or location manager. They're all equal. They just do a different thing, and we all pool our expertise. And really all the director is there for is, if you've done the storyboard properly, is mainly when the crew get a sugar low about 4 PM to try and chivvy them on, because they go a bit stupid and they can't remember what's happened, or they need a chocolate bar or something like that.
So what was the first thing you directed, John? Obviously you started as a producer. Do you remember the very first time you were behind a camera? Or
probably might have done, I think might have been sent out to do a couple of second unit things on Not the 9 O'Clock News, but I wasn't any good at it. And then I got sent on a director's course after I'd done that. I didn't want to go, and I came last because I was trying to make it funnier and didn't just do the... So the first thing probably... the first thing was the pop video I did with Spitting Image for Genesis, Land of Confusion, which won a Grammy, no less.
On your first outing?
I think it was the first thing, but it's slightly difficult, Dave, because BBC tradition is that comedy producers are also directors. You know, they're multiple camera directors, so it's one job. Because I come from radio, they gave me a director because I didn't know anything about visual stuff at all. So, and then I just got used to they kept giving me other directors, whereas I probably could have done it myself, but I didn't know how to sort of write a camera plot for 5-6 cameras. Single camera I could do because it's one at a time. So I really came into my own. The first was that first ad I shot for Phileas Fogg for Stephen Dennis, which is the one in the Mexican bar, which is, again, terrifying experience. I don't know if you've heard this story, but I was so scared on the way to Shepperton that I wanted to knock on the cab, the centre cab as your director, obviously, and just say, "Can you just stop? I need to be sick in the hedge.
What were you anxious about? What was...
Well, because as
being in charge.
You talk about other directors. So one of the reasons that I was happy to have a go at directing was because, good directors are very, very good indeed, and they're magicians, like great actors are magicians and great musicians are magicians. I don't know what it is that Jeff Posner does that he doesn't make a mistake ever. But an awful lot of directors are, lazy, or they are arrogant, or they don't do their prep, or they think they're better than they are, or all sorts of things. And I've watched directors. I've seen people cry on sets, in television sets. I've seen people storm out and resign in the middle of a shoot. I've seen people get desperate. I've seen people completely drunk because they can't hide the fact they're alcoholic and have inside the coffee is brandy and they're drunk by 11 in the morning. I've seen every kind of horror story, and I thought, well, the only explanation for this behaviour is it's such a hard job. The pressure is so awful that it snaps people. So I thought it's going to happen to me, and I didn't have any illusions. I didn't know the first thing about it. And the first thing I did actually it ended a bit sad story really, but I turned up feeling terrified, and the first thing is a guy comes up to me and says, "Do you mind if I go home?" And this bloke is green and he's sweating, and I said, "No, of course not. I think you should go home." And I said to Debbie, the agency producer, "Who is that guy?" And she said, "Oh, he's the first." I said, "The first what?" She said, "Well, he's what we call the first assistant director. He's the guy that if you fuck up, he'd have done it for you." So I go, "No, wait."
On your first ad shoot?
My very first shoot. So the next thing I did was I went to see Dave Shillingford, I remember, was the cameraman. I said, "Hey, Dave, I'm John. I'm a director, and I've done a storyboard and things. I think I know what I want, but I don't know how to get it. And I'll be honest, I don't even really know what depth of field is." And he said, "Don't worry, mate. Leave it with me. It's fine." And he was absolutely amazing. And it's another thing I learned.
To trust.
If you say, "I don't know,"
people give.
You probably know I'm the professor of ignorance at Southampton University, but I really believe in the value of admitting you don't know. You get so far. People who pretend they know, they all have got imposter syndrome, and they're all unhappy and frightened all the time.
And also put a wall up around themselves where people don't want to suggest anything.
So that particular shoot, I remember, because I was very inexperienced, we went a bit late. It was probably 1 a.m. when we finished. And I wanted to stop that same cab driver and say, "Just remember my name because I'm going to be famous." I found the thing.
At the end of it, you felt like...
I found the thing I was meant to do. It's happened a couple of times in my life, but so I was 37 and I thought, oh no, I've wasted 15 years of my life. This is what I should have done to start with. I should have been a director. I'm no good as a producer. I hate firing people. I don't understand money. all
Because
that
the
stuff.
evidence would have said you were good as a producer.
Yeah,
before
but
that
I'm
point.
good at the creative side. You know, so although I hadn't actually physically written a camera script, for example, it would be me who directed the actors. You know, in Blackadder and Not the 9 O'Clock News, I'm saying no, that not that line there.
Right.
Good, okay, and turn. So all that theatre, I
So you're
directed
kinda
like a
doing
theatre
that,
piece, and then
But
the,
not taking,
yeah, wouldn't take responsibility for the camera work.
because it was multi-camera.
Yeah,
But you took
then
responsibility for the performances.
Yeah, and then I would sit annoy the hell out of poor directors who work for me, sit behind them in the producer's box saying, no, shot 3, 2, 1 should be a 2-shot, do you mind?
And did they not say, why don't you do this? Someone must
Yeah.
have said, well, why aren't you doing this? You've got a lot of views on it.
Yeah, not on the 4th series of Blackadder. There's a very nice man called Richard Bowden. And I said, Richard, you know, I've now, shot a few ads and I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it a long time. And please, if we're under pressure and I won't bother you. I trust you. I know you're very good. You've got a great reputation. But if I occasionally come out of my box and say, could you make shot 3, 2, 1 a 2-shot? Don't say, oh, so you know how to do it then, do you? Well, why don't you sit here?
Yeah.
So please don't do that because it'll make me very unhappy. Anyway, the first day we were doing it, about halfway in, exactly that happened. He got tetchy and I said, come into the box, Richard. Do you remember what I said? Because I can actually do it myself. And I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
So as your long stop, so that together we don't make a mistake. That's what I'm here to do, to spot things you might not have seen. It's completely benevolent, honestly, but I'm here to help. And I can do it, and I will do it. So just do me a favour. And then it was bliss after
But it was
that.
okay.
Because it should be.
Yeah.
What do you think the producer's there to make a point? I didn't need to make a point. I'm just there so that we all don't get embarrassed when we see the final cut,
So when was season 4 of Blackadder? What was that?
89.
89. So one thing I couldn't quite figure out was how, like, I made a list of different comedy shows I would like, all the usual things, The Likely Lads, 40 Towers, etc. So I wouldn't have a clue who any of the producers are on all of those, but I knew you'd produced what you'd produced.
Yeah.
It's like, you'd have that credit before a Spike Lee film, a Spike Lee joint. It was like a John Lloyd joint. You think, this is, you were known, you were tied to those shows and known and young.
I don't know
How did
why.
you do that?
It's not, I'd never sought it. Of course, for someone like me, I would know, most of the people who did, Terry Hughes, who did the 2 Ronnies, and,
Right.
John Howard Davis, who did Python and Fawlty Towers and so on. You and Jimmy Gilbert, who did the Frosted What you would know inside. But I agree, I have had much more credit than most people in my position. It's to get a gong from her Madge for being a comedy producer is quite an odd
Yeah.
and rare honour,
It's
I
quirky
think. I
as
have
well.
no
It's
idea
not-
why. I didn't
And
ask
it's
for it.
also sometimes that happens when people have very unusual names because they just
Yeah.
stick, whereas yours is not an unusual
No.
name. I don't know whether that was like careful planning or why that came
No,
about.
I've no idea, and I've there are people I know who certainly deserve more credit than they get, and
Would that have
I've had
infuriated a
plenty.
lot of producers at the BBC?
what?
Would that have infuriated a lot of producers at the BBC? You think, well, why is
No,
why
I
is
don't
he
think so.
known?
Old school producers. I mean, for a start, all of us in advertising television, you're all living in a bubble.
Yeah.
You could name, I know, dozens of people probably, and so could I in advertising, who were, people that you would almost quake in your boots to meet because they were so good or so important that the average person's never heard of. The average person in the country can probably name 2 advertising agencies,
Yeah, if that.
and those are probably defunct. J.
They're
Walter
probably gone
Thompson
now.
or-
Yeah, Sarches.
But and so no, I don't think producers don't go into it because they're egotistical maniacs in television. Producers don't get credit really, and they don't get thanks. One of the things I enjoyed briefly as a director was, if you turn up as a director and you're competent, you've done your homework and you're pleasant, a crew will do literally anything for you. And if
Yeah.
you do even something slightly well, there's a round of applause. And
Oh,
at
really?
the end, everyone's cheering you to the pub. And the producer, broken, angry, despairing, goes home alone, has far too much to drink, and starts doing the budget for the next day because, it's all gone horribly wrong. We've lost all our money. It's a lonely job producing, but you get a kind of Presbyterian thrill from the idea that I know what I did, nobody else knows or cares. I mean, Billy Wilder's great line about movies. He said, "Nobody ever said that, gee, I must go see that movie. I hear it came in under budget."
Yeah.
Nobody cares. If you go to a movie and you say, this is very well produced, it's a disaster, because you shouldn't be thinking that. You should just be enjoying the story.
But did you feel pressure when you go from those hit shows, one after the other, that are funny, did you feel pressure to deliver funny for the next thing? I mean, because it's such a sort of intangible, certainly to people who are not in that world.
No,
When it says a John Lloyd's new thing is it's going to be Blackadder or whatever it may be, people are expecting to laugh. Is that pressure or not? Or you just
Well, if you think, if you'd been inside my life, you'd see it isn't like, I suppose, because if you've done 5 or 6 or 7 things that have lasted, it looks like it's a flawless progression from one to the other. But 70% of my life is projects that didn't come off, which weren't commissioned. And if you look at the ones even that have stuck, Not That I Got News, Blackadder, the first series of both of those would never have been recommissioned today, not a chance. But in the old days, it's coming along. There's a couple of good things I saw there. Have another go. The confidence, Fawlty Towers was repeated, 10 times before it got any sort of ratings. But people had that, the BBC in corporate terms had that confidence, and people who ran departments of BBC had the confidence. Look, I think this is going to work. It takes time to get things good. Nobody but a lunatic thinks, the pilot is brilliant and everything's good immediately. Most creativity is jostling it to get it right all the time, and so it is difficult when you've done something really good and then, like Not That I Got News, we got pretty good at that, and then we started doing Blackadder, and we bit off more than we could chew. And the first series was a horror. It was a horror.
Yeah. Have you watched that recently?
What?
Have you watched it recently?
The first series?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. But there's good bits in it, though, and it did win an Emmy, so it wasn't completely slouchy. It was just very odd.
Yeah.
And not conventionally in the
I wonder
convention.
whether that would be even more appropriate today, when there are lots of things without laugh tracks and a different kind of... I don't know. I haven't seen it for a while, but...
Yeah, and then, Spitting Image... after the year after we started Blackadder, you think...
Was that the following year?
Yeah. I had a very busy 80s. It was, I'm amazed I survived it, actually. I worked so hard under a lot of pressure. So, Spitting Image, my friends weren't talking to me the first half of the first series. They thought, well, it was terrible. This is weird. What a weird-looking, ugly, peculiar thing. And it's lonely. I believed in it absolutely, but it took time to get it right. The scheduling and the casting and all that. How to do the voices when the voices couldn't do puppets, and that's the odd thing about. It's an odd thing I have. I'm always the person who drives the car that people think is a bit silly, but 2 years later everybody would be driving. So I'm a sort of in that. Not in any other way, but in my taste in things, an early adopter. And most people take a bit of time. It's the second series of Blackadder, of Spitting Image, or Not That I Got News, all of them, where suddenly you think,
better in the second series.
Yeah, they all were all much better. But with Spitting Image, for example, long after I'd done it, I did a talk at the Edinburgh Festival about comedy and things. And particularly about Spitting Image, which was then sort of super famous, sort of 3 years in. And the burden of my talk was, you need to get to a level of competence before the average person in the audience will buy into what you're doing. It needs to look good and it needs to be well lit and all that kind of thing. And I said, I'll give you an example. most of you won't have seen this because the first series of Spitting Image never been repeated, so it was very tiny ratings to begin with. So I showed them a couple of sketches, and the roof came off. People were screaming with laughter because it was really the what was in the material was really genuine, original, and because they'd seen puppets and understood the genre, they thought it was hilarious. So I didn't. Then I had an hour to fill to say, "Do you see what I mean?" Because they just proved me wrong.
Yeah, interesting. Because they weren't familiar with the structure.
For example, the young ones. I was editing the very last episode of Not the 9 O'Clock News, and then the next edit suite was Paul Jackson doing the very first young ones. And I looked in, because he was a friend, and I thought, oh no, oh my God, these people have done it completely different to us, and this is much better and much more exciting, much more radical. We're rather conservative and a bit formalistic. Because the first series with the young ones was absolutely marvellous. I remember watching it and thinking, this is the first time I've seen on television a flat that looks like the one I actually live in. You know, with lentils all over the floor and, you know, shitty wallpaper and all that stuff. But the young ones, like me and Spitting Image, you know, once they'd done television for a bit, they thought it's so badly lit, it's so ugly, and we need to make it more professional. And that, you don't.
Yeah.
It's the raw spirit that really, really matters and counts.
So how did you... I was almost going to say it felt like you should have done the young ones from an outside view.
They did ask me. Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah.
And what happened there? Presumably you were aware of the Comedy Store and that whole thing going on.
Well, I'll tell you, there's the three biggest shows that I was offered and said no to are the young ones, the Royal Family, and the Fast Show. Okay, so the first one, I think, was the Fast Show. I said, well, I've done, not that I call it, it's a similar thing. I don't have anything to add. And I said, which is one of the great honours of my life, actually. Charlie Higson was saying recently on somebody else's podcast, somebody said, what was the big light bulb moment of your life? And he said it was when John Lloyd said, I don't want to do the Fast Show. Why don't you direct and produce it yourselves? And that had never occurred to them. And that was the making of them and their fortune and everything else, to take responsibility. So that was the thing. And then with the young ones, which would have been before that, because I knew them a little bit, and it was, you know, ridiculous. You know, where half it was written in pencil, had strange stains on page 4 that you didn't want to really ask about. But I thought, this is brilliant. But I said, you don't need me for this, because I will try and tidy it up and make it logical and sensible. And what I love about this, it doesn't make any sense at all, but it's incredibly funny and weird, and I would watch it. You know, sometimes you don't want somebody to tidy things up and make it neat. And with Caroline Aherne, who I'd worked with on British Gas and really liked. But again, you know, Caroline, that's what makes people like her, made her such an original person. She's implacable. You know, I would say things like, so Caroline, do you think at this point Mrs. Merton should get up and go to the telephone? She said, oh no, John, Mrs. Merton would never go to the telephone. No, I'd just sit here on the couch, you know. The thing is, I realised that there's even doing British Gas ads with her, which is Paul Burke wrote, which I love doing. I love working with Paul and I love working with her, but no, she's got an absolute idée fixe about how she works, and there's no room for me. You'd be much better off doing it yourself or getting somebody, and there are plenty of them, good journeyman directors who are compliant, who fine, whatever, I'll just, you say it, I'll shoot it, and I'm not that kind of person.
And could you see that was going to be a big thing?
Royal Family, yeah. I just knew straight away. I couldn't believe it when they buried it. Where did they bury it? On BBC 3 or somewhere to start with. And, of course, eventually it climbed up through 2, and then it was on 1. It was obviously the new... What's the new completely demotic thing going back through the years? It was it just hit the spot. And she was already super famous, you know.
I watched... weirdly, because I read in an interview with her that she'd based it on a thing called 3 Salons by the Beach. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a documentary about three different hairdressing salons in Blackpool, and you watch it and you think, oh my God, this is it. I'll send you a link if you want. It's funny, but
I just was watching those British Gas things today. It's just like,
Yeah, they're great.
it just so, it got a head on it like a custard cream. There's just something so not like an ad in them. There's so that you know people like that. I've met people like that. I've been in houses like that. It's got like, it really gets to be. She understands who I am. It's very unusual.
But a lot of those, you can't imagine them popping up as ads now, can you?
No.
The same as, there was one I really liked, the Russian one with the cigar, which I'd forgotten.
I was just thinking that this morning, Henry Winterman's Café Crème, and that is a pitch perfect. So you asked me earlier, interference and things like that. As far as I can remember, there are only 3 ads I've ever done where the creative director or whoever the boss in charge came and said, I wouldn't change a thing. That was one of them, Henry Winterman. So that would have been Mark Wennick.
Because it looks like, with that one, like the others, it looks like they've said, this is the vague concept.
Yeah.
Can you sort it out? Because it's just the way it all works. You think, God, it's really funny. I don't remember it as being a big ad at the time.
No.
When there was, there was lots more competition. But you think, that's funny and would be great now if they run that. They're not going to run that.
It's
but do you know what I mean?
I was surprised because I've forgotten it too. I remember it being a happy shoot. Very well cast, absolutely. The acting is absolutely on the button. Isn't a frame out of place, and it's completely mad and silly. But because they're acting as if they believe in it, you believe it.
Yeah.
And that was one when Mark came in and said, I'm not going to say anything. Another one was, do you ever see the one with Harry Enfield as the woman in the sort of dog food parody, Worthington?
Yeah, it's funny.
That was Larry Barker came in and said, don't change a thing, that's perfect. And the other one...
The Dime Bar ones are great as well.
Yeah. But the other one I remember that nobody ever changed anything was the very last ad I did with... The last ad I did at all, actually, with Rob Brydon in Prague for Crunchy Nut Cornflakes.
Yeah.
That went right up the system to the top of Kellogg's, and not one frame was changed. And then there was a senior Kellogg's executive who came back from leave in Chicago, and as a routine thing, she was shown the thing, and she said, there's not enough Crunchy Nut Cornflakes and milk pouring, and they took off the last couple of shots, took out the joke, in fact.
Yeah.
And ruined it, and it was a disaster. And then, so they naturally fired me and Rob Brydon.
Well, it's like a lot of the time, people don't have the confidence to say, that's great. It's like we have to imply that we know something they don't by changing stuff. So I've got a couple of comedy questions that I don't know about.
You've done this completely without notes, Dave. It's just
I've got a whole bunch of... Normally I say, so when you were 23, you did X, and when you were 24... so I haven't got any of those. But I have got some questions on comedy. Like, what's timing? I know, obviously, if you say it too early, it's no good. If you say it too late, it's too... But what is that? Is that... you hear someone's got really good timing.
I don't know
exactly mean.
I can only go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is it's like music. That somebody who understands comedy understands the beat and the flow and the kind of, there's an invisible grid or pattern on which it hangs that one, over doing it for many years, you intuitively know, no, there. It's like there's a famous story about 2 comedians in a limo in New York and young writers going by, and one says to the other, no, there's too many words before chopped liver. It's as simple as that. It's like, it's just a feel for it, Same, film editing is very similar. I can't count the number of times that, an anxious creative team would come in and see the first cut, which, me and the editor have been working on slaving over, and it's one of the most peculiar things. I would never leave a film set unless I know I've got every take. I've got one great take on every single setup, that nothing is left to chance. I'm very particular. And then you see the editor's first cut and you go, oh my God, what's happened? I've completely screwed this up. I've done something's wrong. And then you start jiggling. You think, okay, it's a bit long in the middle, maybe. Oh, that other shot of her where she raises the eyebrow, I prefer take 4, and you work on it, and suddenly it starts like developing a photograph. It starts to come good, and that's great for the end. Oh, that's amazing. And then suddenly there it is, and you've somehow, out of the fire of disaster, the ashes of disaster, you've pulled what is close to a masterpiece. And the two, crazies have come in and they watch it. And they, can you play it again? And you watch it again, and they say, "What do you think?" So, with your work, you must be able to tell this is going to make you famous. This is the most fantastic thing. Like I said to you in the first meeting, this is a brilliant script, and somehow there we are. We've
It's a
delivered
weird
it.
little alchemy type thing that's hard to pin down. I remember the first time I heard timing was when I had a job. I was about 21, and my boss, the creative director, said, "Do you see that Eric Sykes thing? He's got great timing." And I had no idea what he meant. I don't think I'd heard the phrase, and I watched it again. I thought, I don't know, has he got good timing? It's quite funny. I don't know what the. Who's got good timing that you've worked with? I mean, I'm sure there's a long list because you've worked with all the best people. But who springs to mind as having excellent timing, or would you just say 20 people?
I think a lot of people, again, because it's difficult to know what it is, isn't it? You just know it when you see it. It's a bit like a slight obsession of mine is, when you talk about the meaning of life or something meaningful, what do you mean by meaning? Nobody knows what that means. But when you have a meaningful conversation, when you go and see a meaningful movie, okay, that matters. That matters. And that movie... perfectly competent, it's not horrible or, not unwatchable. When you see something that matters or is meaningful, but you can't describe, why is it that Succession, which I haven't seen, I don't even need to see it to know that matters as a piece of work. It's got something universal to say. It's obviously, brilliantly made. And other things were just kind of, okay, just wasted an afternoon. I don't know. I would say that timing is one of those elements of comedy. It's very hard to describe it, but when it's not right, you know immediately.
It's such an intangible world. I also read your job as a producer at the BBC. A lot of it was trying to spot gaps, trying to figure out what isn't there, which is another curious. How do you spot what isn't there? Like I think you said not the 9 o'clock news was because you didn't want a show with cravats.
Yeah. Well, it's because we fell foul of the two Ronnies, or at least Ronnie Barker, in terms of sending them up, which they were taken aback by. But we all adulated the two Ronnies. It's, of its time, and for many years after its time, is a really brilliant piece of work. I mean, it's consistently funny and, well crafted. But the two Ronnies didn't represent the life I lived, which is living in some slum of a flat and, I don't know, some horrible estate, or, one pair of jeans and down at heel shoes and struggling to make a living. And if you didn't have any cash on a Saturday, you were screwed in the 70s. There weren't any cash machines, And so the kind of life one led, Camden Lock, sort of dope smoking shambles, and London in the 70s was a wreck. And I didn't recognise the two Ronnies' sort of golf club ethos as anything that I knew. I'd never worn a cravat in my life. I certainly didn't own any cavalry twills. My parents had cocktail parties, but it wasn't we went down the pub and played Space Invaders. And that was just... there wasn't the way Not the 9 O'Clock News started. It was just over the months of discussion with the writers, you think the two Ronnies is great, but it is not our world. We want to look at what, the phone boxes that people piddle in, that kind of thing. And so that sort of came about by accident. But certainly that's something, when thinking of ideas, I mean, for many years, for example, I would have liked to have done a science fiction series. I don't think there's been a really original one of those. Well, Stranger Things, maybe, which I haven't seen. Black Mirror I haven't seen, but that's something that interests me. Because that's where I was trained, as it were, told, go and do something you like. So I think, what do I like that's not on television? You know, at the moment, there's no sketch show on television. They don't do them anymore, which is a shame. I'd like to do another sketch show. I think one could.
Is that possible?
No, they won't make it because they don't make comedy anymore. It's because comedy doesn't make enough money, and it doesn't travel in the way that crime, police procedures.
And it's probably hard to judge, isn't it, for a committee to put money behind something?
Well, again,
a lot of
there
it is
weren't
trust,
committees
isn't
in
it?
those days. You know, there weren't. You know, the person in charge took responsibility, and you know, for success or failure. Now it's nobody really does. It's all shared responsibility, which is in theory good, but in practice. You know, I'm all in favour of democracy, but not on a film set.
Yeah.
You know, I listen to everybody and then I make the decision. Somebody has to, because if you say, well, let's take a vote on every shot, you'd never get anything made and it wouldn't be any good.
So there's one question, which is that in the 90s, I would have put the most money of all the directors to do a feature film on you.
I know.
It feels like... Obviously, you were most likely to do a feature.
It's a bugger, actually, in parlance.
Why didn't that happen? Or did you
it's a
come
loss,
near to
and
do
I
that?
think it's a shame. It's a waste because of the years I spent as a producer. I didn't claim to be a great director. In fact, when I was a director, I kept expecting Martin Scorsese to drop by and say, "Hey, John, thanks for taking this over. Let me take over now. Let me show you how it's done, kid." But because I was a producer so long, I'm an effective director. I do the story, but I'm very well planned. We don't waste time. We don't shoot millions and millions of feet and then sort it all out in the edit. It's all very, very controlled, and it's very effective. And I was very proud, particularly the fact that I got on with the clients very well, which agencies often were baffled by. Why do you care what they think? Well, because they're paying, and because my job is to make sure that they sell an awful lot of Abbey National accounts. I was very proud of that. And I came very close to shooting a movie, Naked Gun 3. That was an absolutely in the bag. And
did they do a Naked Gun 3?
Yeah, 33 and Third it was called.
Okay.
It passed without trace. It was about a prison. It was awful. And because I'd done these ads with Leslie Nielsen that had run lots of stuff, and believe it or not, Dave, because it was the Zucker brothers who were the team behind it and the airplane stuff and all that. And so the three people they had to please were the Zucker brothers, Leslie, who was the star, and Paramount, who were the film company. And they argued about it so much. I was the only director in the world that they all three of them agreed was the right person for the job. So I got the invitation to go to Hollywood and said, go to Heathrow. Turned up Heathrow and I said, "Oh, I hope we're not going cattle." "Oh, no, sir, first." Flown first, never been first class in my life. Flown first class to LA. Leslie picked me up from the airport in his personal Jaguar. We drove to the Paramount lot to meet Sherry Lansing. And I'm not kidding, Dave, they'd hidden people in the bushes going, "Hey, Mr. Lloyd, I love your work, sir. Love your work, man." Yeah, they were so determined to get me because they had no choice.
How could that not have happened then?
What?
How could that not have happened then?
Well, because I got there and I'd read the script and I said to Sherry Lansing, "Look, it's not funny. I can't shoot. I can't go on a set and do this." I said, "Give me 3 months to rewrite it, and I'll do it for you. I know I can fix it. I'm a good rewriter. I'm a good editor." She says, "You got to do it now, John. It's what we call a bank job. We've done 2 of the franchise. The bank is saying we need another one. It's going to take 50 million. Even if you turn up drunk and sleep on the job, please do it, and then you can do anything you want. I promise you, if you shoot this for us, the next film you can do anything you like."
And you didn't take that?
No, and I said, "No, I need to rewrite it." And I went to see Mel Smith, who was hanging out trying to get movies at the time in some fancy house in the
he
hills.
did a couple, didn't he?
And he shouted at me, he said, "You are a fucking idiot. What are you doing? You've got, on a plate, you've got a major Hollywood studio with a big star and a franchise. You don't want to do it because you don't think it's funny. You're an idiot." Wouldn't speak to me for a year because he'd been trying for years to get the gig. So I don't know. I went home and it was complicated. I just got married. I had 2 little children. And they used to call me up every night. You know, Leslie would call me, John, we're a part of Wales, man. And it was a big turning point in my life, turning that down. And I still don't know whether it was a good thing or not. And then I've been fired from 2 Johnny English pictures, which obviously are based on the Barclaycard that I started.
Yeah.
And there's a few like that. So it is a bit of a waste. And because, again, making comedy films is quite a niche thing. If it's outside rom-com, I have no desire to do a rom-com particularly, but properly funny movies, there's not that many of them, are there, really?
No.
And I nearly got it. Johnny English 2, I nearly persuaded them to do, but, I wanted Johnny English 2 to be... The idea was that Johnny English sees the error of his ways, and he sees he's been a bit of a prat, and like he's a Mr. Bean character, and he becomes basically the Blackadder guy. He comes back, he's angry. He has an epiphany, he thinks, I've been an arsehole all my life, and now things are going to change. And he comes back, and he's cruel and hard. And I was so excited when I finished the draft. I can't tell you, I thought, this is the real thing. But Tim Bevan, Working Title, didn't agree. No, we want Mr. Bean works fine for us, John. We don't,
It's difficult. It's easy to say perhaps you should have done the Naked Gun, but obviously it's tough if you don't really like the script. It's a hell of a lot of work.
Well, all I can say is that, have you ever heard of Ken Finkelstein?
No.
He was the guy who directed
He did it, didn't he?
You never heard of him again.
Well, that's the thing.
And
you
Leslie
do it.
said to me, I saw him just before he died, actually. We had a cup of tea in his... He came over to London, he was in the Park Tower, and he was broken, and he said, you made the right decision, John. It was horrible. They were horrible to me. It was not funny at all. It was lonely and miserable. You made the right decision.
Shame. You'd have met OJ.
Yeah.
Hung out with OJ for a bit.
Yeah.
So on the Johnny English, somebody told me you'd read the Paul Feldwick's book. I don't know whether that's correct, but...
I started it.
Oh, okay. Because obviously that's
I know
primarily
Why the
about...
Peddler Sings, is it? Something like that one?
Yeah.
What's the title? It's got a peddler in it.
It's got peddler in it. I should know this. I've interviewed Paul. It's Why the Peddler Sings, is it? Doesn't sound quite right. But essentially that's about that campaign. And
I could not believe it when I opened that book and I thought firstly, what an amazing honour to be the opening thing. And also, shows how good Paul was at his job, or is at his job, is that I couldn't have written that better myself, that he understood absolutely every beat in what Barclaycard was about and how it worked and why it was so good, including all that stuff that, famously, it takes much longer to describe any of those early Barclaycard ads than it does to watch them.
Yeah.
Watch them, it takes just under a minute, but to describe them takes 4, 5, 6 minutes because there's so much in them, so densely built.
Well, they were perfect, weren't they? They were like...
I mean, only
like they'd been snipped out of a major feature film. They felt so rich. But it's interesting. I mean, Paul, I think he can describe that now, and that's why when I did a podcast with him, it was interesting because at the time he would have been in advertising and now when he steps away from it, essentially he says it was successful because people like them. They thought it was funny. It's not as scientific and highbrow as it would have been at the time. It would have been lots down to the agency and all sorts of things. Whereas now it's much more the vibe, I think, he says now. Because people just like it and people in advertising don't like to admit that. It's a bit like you're saying with comedy. They don't like to say that was successful because people laughed. They like to say, well, the undercurrents of this and that, and we did X, Y, and Z. But I think one of the interesting things with that is that I think they initially their big idea, I think he says in the book, was to get Rowan Atkinson because someone in research said, why don't you do something with him?
Okay, it wasn't their idea.
Yeah, no, that's right. So then I think, okay, go on. I thought... This is. I love
this thing. You hear that occasionally they rewrite it. Like
of course.
Boddington's got rewritten. There are lots of ads I've done that
the history is
misremembered.
Yeah. So what I thought the history is that they'd written some Barclaycard ads. They kept researching them. They were dying a death, and this is what I think what it says in the book. And then, in a bout of desperation, someone said, we're going to need another route to go in because it's dying every time we research it. someone writes some scripts with Rowan Atkinson, I believe. They go into research, everything's trashed, and then in desperation, Paul or someone says, well, what do you think we should do to the public? And they go, well, do something with Rowan Atkinson, he's funny. So he comes away 6 months in, and however much they've spent with the finding that people think Rowan Atkinson's funny, that's all they've got. And then this is, I think, oh, it's come over. So then they contact him or possibly you, because you may have shot some stuff with them, and say, what about doing something with Rowan Atkinson? And then you, him, or both have this idea of Blackadder 5 character, James Bond, and say, well, why don't you do something with him? That's what I think is floating around as a theory. Is that?
No, it's not even slightly true.
Is it not?
No.
Okay.
So, I got a script from John Matthews, who was the writer, and I forget the name of the nice bloke who was his then art director. It became Pete Gatley later, but it was another guy. He didn't stay. And what had happened was that BMP had just won the Barclaycard account from CDP, who for many years had done the Alan Wicker ads, beautiful Barbados with that one. Yep. And it got very tired and old-fashioned, and they won the account, and they'd won it with this script that John had written, basically called Wicker Island. And it was that Monty Python sketch where all the Wickers are all the same thing. And in order to get the new voice of Barclaycard, they picked the person who was least like Alan Wicker, who was Michael Palin. Right, so...
In the script?
Yeah, that was the script. Okay. Was there's lots of Wickers, and Michael Palin said, let's have him because he's not like Alan Wicker. That was how they won the account. And so then the first script, the basic idea was it's like Mike Palin, who's then into travel, goes around the world, and of course he's got a Barclaycard. That's the thing, And so I got this script. I said, I like to work, I think we can make this work. I love Mike Palin. Where do we start? And so they said, well, we haven't actually asked Mike whether he would like to do it or not. I said, you've just won the account saying that you've got Michael Palin in it and you haven't asked him. I said, well, no. So I said, would you ask him? And I said... Would
you ask him?
Yeah. I said, yeah.
Okay.
So I called him up and I said, Mike, do you want to do an ad? And he said, no, not really. I did one in the 60s. I didn't enjoy it really. But as it's you, John, I'll read the script. So I sent the script, of course, and fax in those days. And he said, no, I don't think so. Sort of dows and going on a dow and using a Barclaycard doesn't really interest me. So I said to John Fraser, that's it, Fraser Adamson.
Yep.
He didn't want to do it. And they said, well, this is a disaster because, we've told Barclaycard we've got him. What are we going to do? Do you know anyone else famous? That was their line. Do you know anyone else famous? Yeah, I know a few people. Who do you think could do a Barclaycard? And I said, well, I think Rowan, because he'd done very few ads. I think he did one for Eagle Insurance or something. It was terrible. I said, we just finished Blackadder. He's on his game, and we get on brilliantly, and let's talk about it. So we literally sat in my kitchen thinking, okay, so what's the brief? Okay, well, basically Barclaycard's the fourth emergency service. You take it anywhere, it helps you out in all sorts of different ways, like all these product points. And so we needed to think, what kind of character would travel the world, and travelling salesman, I don't know, a tennis player, spy, that's a good thing, that's quite fun. So that's where it started, and we literally started roughing it out in my kitchen, and that got through into the agency. Okay, great to get Rowan. Okay, these are working. This is kind of interesting stuff. So then we had to go and present it to Barclaycard, and they said, can you come with us? I said, of course. They said, we haven't actually told the marketing director, Mike McManus was his name, that we couldn't get Mike Palin. So you still haven't told him.
Well, they want you to deliver that news.
Yeah. So I went up to Northampton. And
John hasn't been able to deliver Michael Palin.
I said, so, Mike, Mr. McManus, we said we got Mike Palin for it. I'm afraid there's been a bit of a glitch. And he said, what? He was, you could see he was about to get really cross because a lot of money being spent. I said, but we have got a bit of a treat because we got Rowan Atkinson. He said, I can't. He said, I can't. What? He's my favourite. I love Blackadder. You've got Rowan to do our ad. I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. So everyone's really relieved. So that first year, you can imagine, everyone was so happy that nobody'd been fired. We got through all the difficulties, and it was just marvellous, those first 3 ads, because they let us do it.
Yeah.
They let us go and do it and didn't interfere, and they won all the prizes and all this kind of stuff.
So that character wasn't going to be Blackadder 5. Is that bullshit?
Well, there were lots of ideas. There was actually a show several people were keen on called The Blackadder 5, which was about a band in the 60s with a drummer called Baldrick.
Okay.
And then there was Homo Blackadder, which is the one set in prehistory where Baldrick is king of the primates, and out of the jungle comes Homo Blackadder, the first human being. But no, I mean, but it's that sort of feeling, isn't it? It's definitely got the Barclaycards definitely have the feeling of Blackadder in the way that the Johnny English movies are much more like Mr. Bean, really.
Yeah.
Which I think is a loss. And in fact, when we were shooting the second year out in Bora Bora in Tahiti, we were sitting on the Motu with then Alan Silverman, the Barclaycard guy, and I said, Alan, how much... I know you're spending about $500,000 to $1 million a year on the actual shoots, about $500,000 for a couple of ads, maybe a bit more. How much do you spend on the media? And he goes, it's about $12 million a year. I said, okay, see how well it's working. You can see this is amazing. These are like mini movies. It's really, we're all getting on amazingly well. This product is just... They were making the bank £500 million a year in extra money, those ads. The account man got drunk on the island one night and told me this. It was keeping the entirety of Barclays Bank afloat. It was one of the most effective ad campaigns there has ever been. It's won prizes for effectiveness. And I said to Alan, give me $6 million, give me half the media spend, and I will make you the world's first 90-minute ad, an hour and a half long ad called Barclaycard the Movie. That will be the title of the movie.
Right.
I know we can do it. And he said, well, we don't have a mechanism for that. I could maybe sponsor you for something, but we could give you $6 million to make a movie. Yeah, it'll be huge and make you famous. But anyway, nothing happened for 10 years.
Sure, that's a great idea.
It was a great
That's
idea.
what I thought would happen with digital media, that people would take their media budgets and create stuff with content, good content, rather than bullshit content that they've...
There's so many things like that, Dave. Yeah. With the advance in technology, when we started QI 20 odd years ago, we had a thing called VLC television, very low cost television, because anybody can afford... you can shoot a movie on your phone now.
Yeah.
Why don't people? Why is it only Steven Soderbergh who's done it? Why can't... There's plenty of talent out there. Why don't people make their own movies? Why isn't YouTube full of hilarious comedy sketches? Because people are doing it at university and, in theatres. And why don't people... and the particular idea which I really liked was... you think of all the people who go off in their gap year and go to the most dangerous and exciting places in the world, and they've all got phones. Shoot everything.
Yeah.
Come back and we'll help you edit it and make an amazing... Then we have 100 films on...
Yeah.
You want to go to Ghana? Here is an amazing film about 3 weeks in Ghana. It's never happened. And still, people are still going begging for the to the authorities for money to make stuff, which is... And as the authorities now are not like the old Hollywood studio system, sort of strange moguls ordering, but I want the film about the 10 Commandments. I want this. They're not. There's none of that anymore. I was worried about, what's the demographics, what's the spreadsheet say, what do people want? You'd say,
I love that Barclaycard the movie. What that didn't get? Why didn't that?
Well, it doesn't fit a box. Even then, there's always a box.
So that would have been way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it would have been massive.
And how could they
fun
not
too.
have got their money back on that?
Well, as you know, Johnny English took a lot of money. And I'm sad about that, because I think that was a missed opportunity. I think they could have been better.
But it's also such a good subversive sort of idea, Barclaycard the movie. rather than hiding it and slipping in the odd.
Dave, that's why we should have worked together.
Yeah.
See.
But all of these things that come up where you've been given complete trust have turned out really well. And obviously there's less trust now than there used to be,
Yeah.
I think. But, like the first... I think I was talking to Paul Feldwick about this. The first batch of Barclaycard, you're all high on the fact that you're allowed to make it and you all got together and you all want to do it. So presumably as a director, you're got more responsibility and trying even harder to make it happen because it feels like it's yours rather than feels like you've been brought in to shoot for someone else's thing.
This is what the employment policy at QI is, for example. I learned that is find the best people you can afford and trust them. And if they get stuck, help them. And if they fuck up, fire them. There's nothing else to say about management. Micromanaging people, hiring, which is someone like... It's the most ridiculous thing. You hire somebody who's basically gone through all the hoops and maybe competed against 3,000 other directors and they want only you, and then they start telling you what to do. But you see, I thought I was a comedy genius. Yeah, but can you just do what I want? But why didn't you do what we say? Well, because I'm not doing or not doing what you say. We want to do this well, and I know how to do it on your behalf. I don't want the credit. You're paying me boffly. I don't need anything apart from I want to be able to do something for you that you will make you look good. That's all I care about. And to do it well. But then the two things happen to fit together. I mean, it's just that something's gone wrong, hasn't it? Because look at the telly. When was the last time you saw a good ad on telly? When was the last time you saw a poster in the street? No. Yeah. The last thing I think of Sonny Bravia with the bouncing balls.
2006 or something. But it just occurs to me that the reason why art directors are more trusting is because they have to commission more stuff. They have to commission photographers and illustrators. And if you do that, there's such a jump.
That's right.
That you
Writers
can't control
don't commission anyone, do they?
No, not really. So they're trying to get their thing made as they want it.
That is,
Art
you've
directors,
just cleared up
exactly,
something that I've been thinking about for 40 years. Thank you.
That's all right. But yeah, as an art director, so if you're commissioning photographers, the way I commission photographers and illustrators is to say, I want you to do it like it's a personal piece of work.
Me
I
too.
don't want you to do it like an ad or like you think I might want it. I want it to do it like you want it. And you get good results like that.
That's exactly my thing too.
But it's not a common way of doing stuff. Right, let me refer to my notes. We're getting there. No, I just jotted down the, from Phileas Fogg, the bits that were just making me laugh. Translating I, and it's I. She bought a jacuzzi. It's such a specific it's like not, she bought a mansion, she bought a jacuzzi. It's like his mum bought a jacuzzi because they were doing so well. Anyway, so the other comedy question is, what are funny bones and who has the most of them?
Well, as I say, I go back to that thing, if only I knew what comedy was, or what it's there for, and how I know how to do it. I know how to help other people do it and how to stop them making mistakes. And I know you've just done it so often. I reckon I know to within about 90% whether something will get a laugh or not. But I don't know how. It's just, and also because what I really am is, I've masqueraded as a producer and a director, performer even, but what I am is a script editor with power. That's what I'm good at, is fixing the script, and it's one of the things that occasionally was a point of difference with young teams on an ad is, guys, honestly, it's not my opinion. I'm not trying to, it's not a competition. I'm not trying to get my line in against yours. I'm doing it because I know what you mean, but twist that there. And it's an analogy I've sometimes used as the difference between brilliant and a disaster is like if you think of a long lens, you're looking at 200mm lens, okay, and you're trying to focus it. It takes only the smallest movement of the hands.
Yeah.
And the thing is completely out of focus. You can't see, it's just a blur. Get it in focus and there, whoa, that's a shot. It's just those two, it's such a small difference between success and failure. and you're fumbling for it all the time. You're on the lip of failure all the time, and so often you just at the last minute you can get something right. But it's also, you say, it's about trust. It's about, like, I don't go to work to show off. I find work incredibly difficult. I've usually been up for 3 nights beforehand, struggling to find the solution to something. When I go on the set, I'm there. It's not about me. It's about giving service, and it's about that elusive thing of trying to discover quality. You've got all the kit. You've got a great crew. You've got wonderful actors. You've struggled. You've seen 60 actors to get these 2 people, and they're just absolutely perfect together. And then still you do the first cut, and it's no good. It's like, oh, well, no. You're just on the lip of failure all the time, and if I knew, somebody said if it was easy, it would have got about, It's like, that's the thing about anything. All I can say is if you do something really well, there's a sort of certain number of people who think, well, that was a lucky break. So nothing really good happens by accident, does it? No, it just doesn't. You might get a bit of a chance. You might have a lucky shot, or you might, have a brilliant idea in the middle of the night, but really great piece of work. There is not anything accidental about them, because if they're frame perfect. Because one of the things I used to love about working in advertising, it is possible, I think, to do a perfect ad. I think I've done a few that come very close. I have never done a perfect half-hour sitcom, and I don't care how much you might like the end of Blackadder 4. It's full of holes and mistakes and weak parts and wobbly sets and all that kind of thing. Never done a perfect half-hour sketch show. But ads, it's possible to do something that I think there's a few that one's done. You think, you watch that in 50 years, you'll still go, that's classy, that is. That's classy.
So I've got a couple of these rounding up questions. So to put these in order, let's have a look. So to put these in the right order, Alan, David, Martin, Brooks, could be Mel or Albert. What order would you put those in?
So Alan, David,
Martin. They all sound like first names, but they're actually second names. So Woody Allen, Larry David, Steve Martin, Mel Brooks. I was trying to think of a fifth.
As comedy geniuses.
Yeah. And who's missing? I mean, none of those are English.
No, I don't know that there would be.
Or would you kick some of those out?
I don't think they'd be in my favourites. I'm trying to think who.
Who would you have?
Gosh. See, I don't know. Larry David, I know as someone behind the camera, but I've never seen.
Have you not seen
show.
Curb Your Enthusiasm?
No. People say you should see it because you relate to that, you grumpy sod. Robin Williams should be on there, shouldn't he? Probably.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think. I think I'm probably too dyed-in-the-wool.
Who would you have gone? Pythons, Goons?
No, Goons I was too young for the Goons. Python. That was the student show. That was, when I went up to university, that was the hot ticket. I often joke I've only seen the top half of Monty Python because you're looking over people's heads all the time.
So who would spring to mind as, we'll put it another way, who would you have most liked to have had in front of your camera?
That's such a difficult question, Dave. I don't know. That's a really peculiar thing. I can't answer that. I've never been a big hero worshipper person, really.
Have you not?
No. Who would I like to work with that I haven't worked with?
Because certainly in the UK, you've virtually worked with all of them in my lifetime.
Most people, yeah. I'm trying to think back to my sort of childhood in terms of American stuff.
Phil Silvers?
Yeah. Ronan Martin's Laughing. But I don't think I've ever had that thing. This Robin Williams, Steve Martin. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe they're just not quite the right.
What about Woody Allen? Would you not have? You must have found him funny and
I think he's
loved his
very good on
films.
the one-liners.
Right, but not his films so much.
I like Manhattan,
Yeah.
Annie Hall, but not. No, I'm not not a kind of. Oh my God, I'd faint if he came in the room sort of person, and that's not because of subsequent
Yeah.
events. And the same Robin Williams, Steve Martin. I don't know. They just don't. But I have
But
to
would you go earlier? Billy Wilder and Ernst Lubitsch, any of those? Preston Sturges.
I think more that, more
Yeah.
that, yeah, that era probably. Some Like It Hot. But like you're saying, it's one of the things that when I'm looking for what should I do next, I think what's not on television that I like, and I feel that about comedy movies. I think I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't see. The thing is, I like the comedy I like is completely mad, but it's acted in such a dry way that you accept the premise, which is actually a kind of. I remember reading a book about Python, thinking I spent most of my television career trying to avoid being anything like Monty Python, not calling people Mr.
Yeah.
Squirrel Wrangler and all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Being
Interesting.
sensible, and you read the theory of Python is exactly the same as Not the 9 O'Clock News. Think of a crazy premise and make it look like you mean it. It's odd how the principles are universal. I think, and I think there's a very small number of films that are. You probably have to go back to Animal House, and certainly Naked Gun 1. I think is a very, very funny movie, almost right to the end. That's the kind of movie I want to make. I want to make.
Well, that's sort of missing now, isn't it? A lot of the comedy now, like Curb Your Enthusiasm, is this sort of improvisational, loose,
Yeah,
long, those very tight, punchy things like those things that you mentioned. I don't think they're being. It seems to be partly digital, I guess. Let the cameras roll. Let's see what we get.
I think it's that sort of started with that sort of French and Saundersy kind of, we're sort of mucking about here, there's no,
Yeah.
you don't want to say I'm really trying to do this properly. That's what,
Yeah.
there's a slightly apologetic that it's all a bit silly, and I'm trying to think more modern. Also, I think it's not that I wouldn't go and watch a comedy in a context, but it's slightly a busman's holiday for me. I think I'd rather see something that wasn't. I'd rather go and see a band or something at the National, because I don't.
And would you ever desire to do some serious stuff?
Yeah, I'd loved that. Only
Have you?
in all the years, the 12 years I directed, I did that full time for 12 years. That I only was allowed to direct one serious ad, which was a charity, for a very odd charity actually.
Yeah.
But God, such a joy doing straight stuff. You
Yeah.
make it look beautiful.
less
It makes
pressure.
sense. You don't have to do the laughs as well. It's because it's all I know comedy. I mean, yeah, I think it's difficult, but anything's difficult. All good work is difficult. I mean, I wouldn't have any idea how to direct a drama. How would I know whether it was working or not if you couldn't hear the laughter?
Yeah.
But it's the idea of being able to do a car ad. Wow, how fabulous! Just bends on a
You'd like
mountain,
that,
and
yeah.
I love the idea. Nobody's ever given me the chance there. Kit Kat Divorce. Did you see that one?
Kit Kat Divorce. What happened in that one?
That was a very good. It was a
I
lovely.
would have seen it, and I can't
Lovely
remember.
little ad of it's a divorce court where it said this marriage is irrevocably breaking down. We'll take a break. We'll take a.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
there's a couple sitting there who obviously are estranged, and he offers her a bit of Kit Kat, and
Yeah.
she softens and she starts to cry, and he smiles, and you think, oh no, they're going to get back together. How lovely, just over a Kit Kat. And then the guy's real wife comes in, who's a
Oh, okay.
terrible harridan. Guess what you talking to that woman for?
Funny.
It's really
Yeah.
lovely music, and it's the thing I like to do with comedy is it's not just a joke. It's also got a little human mini movie, a little mini story, a little something more going on than just the. And that's one of the things I loved about advertising back in the day is transcending the genre. You know, it happens that this is an ad for a credit card, Barclaycard, or for a dime bar with Harry Enfield as a chocolate bar, and then but it spreads delight. If you don't enjoy dime bar, being compared to armadillos, you're not a human being, and you don't have to buy the chocolates to enjoy this. That's where I like it, and I know because I've read you in the public prints, going on about how a lot of advertising is just saying, hey, this is really good, buy it.
Yeah.
That's no good.
It's weird, isn't it?
When you think of the whole of Barclaycard, it's basically a Barclaycard. Boff, don't be ridiculous. I wouldn't soil myself with a Barclaycard. That sort of anti-advertising is so cunning, and it works so well for the
absolutely.
Brits, so dry, so kind of...
But it all seems to have reverted to a more 50s style. I'm sure there are some good, obviously still good ads around, but it feels like it's all reverted back to people smiling and, saying this is amazing. And certainly when I started in it in 85, the idea was everybody knew that advertising was bullshit. So you had to sort of be in on the game and say, let's try and make them laugh, or let's not pretend it can do stuff it can't because they're onto us, Whereas it seems to have reverted back to that a lot, I think. There's certainly a lot less. It seems like there's a lot less trust around. I mean, it's interesting. As we said earlier, all the ones that you really liked, you were trusted.
One of the people I would put on that list is Jerry Seinfeld, who
You like Jerry Seinfeld?
I'm a big fan, and I'm certainly a big fan of his sitcom. But he was talking online the other day. There's a clip on Instagram, I think it was. Talking to a friend, he said, do you know what's gone wrong with the current society? And the guy says, no, what? And Jerry said, well, when I was growing up in the 70s, nobody did things for money. We took a job because it was a cool job. That's why we want to do it, because it'd be fun. It's a laugh, and I'm sure you support. I know. Going into advertising, I came to advertising after television, and the joy of it, what larks! It was marvellous. It was great fun. People went to lunch. They had parties. They had a laugh. They did stupid things, and that Jerry said that's what's gone wrong. Is money is like in the last whatever it is. For 50 years now, people think money's all that counts, and that's what with advertising we were so proud, weren't we? This is not, we're working for money and we're doing it to sell things, but it's much more than that. This is a
part
piece
of culture,
it's
and you're
art.
trying to move things on,
It's art. I mean, when you think of, what was I thinking the other day? Could you eat 3 Weetabix? Those sort of things. Or you're a very nice man for the day. The things that go into your mind and you never forget. They form part of who you are, and part of who you are as a Brit. And they're unifiers. They bring people together. And if you've been privileged to do an ad that people remember for a long time, there's something very important about that, and it's not primarily about the money. It's art in the service of commerce. Not 100%. Commerce in the service of commerce. It's like, the way that I remember BBH in the old days used to fire clients. They could say, "You are so boring. We cannot. I don't care how much money you're offering."
Doesn't happen now.
No.
Because I think there used to be if they created bad work, it would reflect badly on them. Whereas now, if you're making money, that's fine. Doesn't matter.
And also, the thing is, just talking to you, it makes us happy, doesn't it? When we think back to some of the old days, and it's nothing to do with the money. I mean, obviously, some of us got to be executive creative director, and some of us made enough money to buy a house and all that kind of thing. And I was saying all those ads I did with Rick Mail. First ads he ever did for Nintendo. He called his house in Notting Hill Nintendo Towers.
Did he?
And I bought Alan Davis his first house in Highbury, with a swimming pool in the sitting room.
Oh, really? That's what he got from that? The Abbey National, was it?
And everybody needs enough, but actually it's like, it's one of the things you can see, I think Seinfeld is absolutely right, is that from top to bottom, the obsession with money above all things is a disaster in every single direction. Nobody who's got it is happy, and those people who've got it are very unhappy and very angry.
I heard a thing the other day on the same thing, not by someone as funny as Seinfeld, by the lead singer from who did the album Thick as a Brick, Ian Anderson.
Oh yeah.
Do you know
yeah.
Ian Anderson?
Yeah.
Who said that in 1973 he phoned David Bowie to see whether he would play saxophone on his album, and he said, "Yeah, what day?" He said, "Oh, tomorrow. We were hoping." He said he turned up, played saxophone, waved goodbye, never asked for any money. And he said, ever since then, I thought, if anyone asks me to do something, I either want to do it and I'll do it for free, or I don't want to do it and I won't do it. I'm never going to charge anyone.
That's why I'm here. I'm doing it
Exactly, you're doing it.
Because I heard the one with Paul, and I started reading Paul's book, and I thought, this is the real deal. This is a person who really cares. And then when you found all those ads for me that I haven't forgotten, Lost, which I was so grateful for, I thought, you are the Dave Dye. You are the real deal. You're doing it for love and because you care.
You're a great judge.
And that's why I'm here. And I don't guess what would be the point of having 200 quid or 50 quid?
No,
or whatever.
exactly. Well, it's very kind of you.
And also, I always say the effectiveness ads that work. Did you see in those? I don't know if you saw the Abbey National. Did you send me those? The Abbey
I did,
National.
yeah.
Do you see one with the bikers in?
Yeah.
Shot that in South Africa, made it look like Britain. So Alan's biking along with a little cat in his in his bike basket, and he sees a thing called the Bikers' Arms, and he goes in, and it's the wrong kind of bikers. They're all Hell's Angels in there, and they look very threatening. And he's a bit scared until it turns out they all bank with Abbey National, and therefore he gets away with this. Absurd thing. We presented the cut. We were very happy with it. We'd had such a laugh. It's where actually I told Alan I've had this idea for a game show about interesting things called QI. Would you?
Is that where
would you do it? Yeah. It was there, and he said, "Oh yeah, that sounds fun. I'll have a go." So he was the first person I asked about QI.
Off the back of that, that's interesting. I went to college with him, Alan.
Did you?
Yeah.
Are you contemporary?
I am. Yeah. He was. I think he was a year younger. But it's funny. Then he was a friend of mine, and he was like the young posh kid from the posh school. Whereas now he's like the blokey.
Oh yeah.
When he's on TV,
Life's
he's like the
complicated
blokey.
enough, I know.
Yeah. But I really liked the guy shouting "wig," and I was thinking that I even jotted it down. Perm, that's it. Yeah. And I was thinking, why is that funny? It just makes me laugh.
Oh, that was really good. That first one, I love that. And so anyway, so we showed the cut to Abbey National.
Yeah.
Very nice woman she was, marketing director, and she said they're a bit worried. Oh no, she said, but our client base is going to be really upset if we about Hell's Angels is going to put them off. The new business. Why would they want to bank with people who Hell's Angels like? Anyway, it all went great. They were courageous enough, because by that time we'd become friends, and we would all the ads did very well, and the staff liked them. That's the other thing. The staff were so proud of those ads and the bank that made them feel good, which is another very good reason for doing advertising. Anyway, so they put the ad out, and it was a great thing in the news. The Plymouth chapter of the Hells Angels in Britain was so impressed by the ad, they'd moved their bank account from the NatWest to Abbey National.
Excellent.
I mean, the fact that an ad can persuade a gang of Hells Angels to change their bank, that makes me so happy.
But that's what it should be, that you put out good things and good things happen. It attracts people rather than as if you've got any control over what people are doing.
Yeah, and also I know I've read you talk about this. Is one of the things I feel very strongly about, and it goes back to that thing of me being a builder. I make the assumption the audience is like me. They're smart, or I'm not saying that I'm particularly smart, but they're just people of ordinary intelligence who don't like rubbish. They like good stuff. And if you do it well, they'll go with you anywhere. So don't patronise them. Don't talk down to people. Well, they won't really understand what that means. Yes, they will. They will. People are much smarter than they're given credit for.
Well, that's exactly. I say this quote every week on a weekly basis of Steven Spielberg saying when he had 10 films he had 5 films in the top 10 biggest grossing films, I think it was. And they said, what is it you look for in a script that is going to be such a good grossing film? And he says, I just look for things that I like. If I like them, other people might like them. Same thing, exactly what you said earlier, that if you don't like it to start with, well, why would anyone else?
Absolutely. Martin Scorsese says, when I make a movie, I am the audience.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it, because something, if you're telling the truth for yourself, it's going to have an effect. And
Yeah.
It's not about pleasing other people. That happens by accident. If you're lucky enough to be in the same box as the people who are watching it.
So I've got one last question, but I
Yes.
fear you'll say, I don't know, I'll know it when I
God.
see it. But which is give someone one piece of advice if they're doing comedy. Producing comedy, directing comedy. Could you give such a thing?
This is hopeless, Dave. I'm just
No, no.
completely failed.
I think in not necessarily answering is as good an answer as any, really. I mean, if it's hard to pinpoint some of these things like timing and funny bones, and I think that's useful to know. That's the truth of it, isn't it?
The technique, I think, is mainly you've got to practice it a lot, like anything. It's certainly true of writing. The more you write, the better you'll get. And the more you read, the better you'll get. The more you copy, the better you'll get. I think that the principal thing that I would say is just do what you think's funny. And if it makes you laugh, you stand a chance with other people. You know, when I was a young telly producer and you'd hang out in the bar with, you know, obviously many of the producers in the comedy department were geniuses that I really looked up to and adulated. But in any group, there's people down the bottom end who are a bit rubbish, you know. They're just doing it, you know, had too much to drink. And they say, what are you doing at the moment? They go, it's a thing about, you know, it's got so-and-so in it. I said, what do you think? I said, well, the coach parties are like it, which is what they used to call the people who bust in the audience, you know.
Yeah,
all the old ladies will scream with laughter because it's a knickers joke or whatever. And I never done that. I just thought I'm just going to do what makes me laugh. I couldn't. The idea of doing something that you don't personally find
you
funny.
assume other people would. Yeah.
I can't understand that. And I do like a laugh, and that's to say, going back to the builders and all that, and or indeed at school. It's how you get through going to boarding school is have a good laugh about things and. You know, there's no hiding place with comedy. In a way, it's the most dangerous kind of thing because with comedy, it's either funny or it's crap. There's not a... You know, if you think of the news, if you think of a soap opera, if you think of a drama, you can watch a drama, you go, yeah, I quite enjoyed it. You know, it's quite like the bit at the end. Comedy is either that's bollocks, that's complete bollocks, or it's really funny. There's not really, there's sort of missing middle.
There's not percentages. It's 10% funnier than it was. So I presume you must be, your lawyerly skills must have come into play to persuade people of your point of view to go with your point of view. Because the world is set up to not trust someone. So to get people on board that you find this funny or you think this will work, you must be persuasive, I'm guessing.
Well, I just had a bit of a fight with my wife the night because she's the one person I can't persuade by argument, which is very, very annoying. But generally, I like to govern by consensus. I'm not comfortable by getting my way when I can see that people resent it or don't agree. And I certainly can count times where I've insisted against the advice, say, of a cinematographer that I think we should do it that way, and then seen the cut and they, oh no, he was right, and I should have listened. And I'm also very consensus driven. If somebody's got a better idea than me, in it goes. I don't care if it's the runner or the tea, person behind the tea trolley.
But you're making that call.
Yes, but on behalf of everybody, not because I don't take credit for it. I can't even usually remember who thought of the idea, but it's on behalf, I'm acting on behalf of all of us, including me, obviously. But it's not so I can be better than everybody else, or so that I'm only, indeed, I've never wanted to be anybody's boss. I've always wanted to be the sort of Pope's advisor, Your Holiness, may I suggest. I never want to take responsibilities, but I've found that I do that, and I trust myself. I know when I go to work, I'm going for the right reason. I'm trying to give service to whoever's employed me to say, if I promise them, I know I can do this, and I'll do the best I can, I'll do that. And some of the most painful things in my advertising career, for example, have been where I've looked the client in the eye across a table in a pre-production meeting and said, trust me, these are going to be amazing. I've got this absolutely down bang to rights. And on a couple of occasions, I'm going to think of one, I'm not going to name the client, or indeed the agency, or the creative director, who happened to be a cokehead, who went off on one, ruined the cuts, presented them, the client said it was all my work, and the client said, I can't believe that guy promised me. He looked me in the eye and said, he promised, these are awful, these are a disaster. And the cokehead said, yeah, well, there you go. And they said, John Lloyd will never work for this company again anywhere in the world. And he was fired, this bloke.
Was he?
Yeah.
But it's
And
funny
he
you
bought a
remember
yacht
that, 'cause-
with his severance money.
Oh, yeah.
He
I've
knows
heard of-
who he is.
Yeah, I've heard of someone who. But it's funny you remember that, because a lot of people just wouldn't care.
Well, you know,
It's good that you care, but do you know what I mean? That you
because
remember,
I've done so many different things. You know, I've done radio and telly and
Yeah.
theatre and, you know, books and, you know, I've done a lot of different stuff. And I wasn't in advertising because I was on the route to somewhere more important. I did it
Yeah.
because I genuinely liked it. I often thought I would have been a planner if I'd been an ad man.
Would you?
I like what's the thing? We've got this thing, we think it's good. How do we persuade other people? How do we draw it to their attention? How do we spin it, not in a dishonest way, so it's a different way of looking at it? It's not just a washing powder or a processed cheese or a yogurt. There's a thing. And I like that idea that I always think the way good ads that I did worked is, it's not, there are great examples, Barclaycard, Red Rock Cider, where the product is embedded into the script, where they're telling you as part of the joke what the product is. But mainly, I think it's leading by example, that people look at this ad for beer or financial services or cars or whatever, they go, whoever spent money to make a thing that good has got I'm going to have a pint of beer on that. That's what certainly happened with Red Rock. They thought, who would ever have thought a cider ad would be funny? When
Paid to entertain me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally it's Strongbow. It's like, you know, muscles and arrows
yeah.
going to barrels.
Yeah.
But that's a genuinely funny piece of work. Cheers, mate. I'll have a pint of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like that.
I think a lot of it, more of it works like that than people like to admit.
Yeah, and with the client thing, well, we must tell them that it's made with a platinum layer. They don't care. They don't care. There was that Tetley Better ad I saw where they insisted on saying it's made in genuine Yorkshire squares. You say, what, you mean in Leeds near the rubbish bins? There's no, Yorkshire Square is a kind of brewing vat. I said, but nobody will know and they won't care.
Is that what it says? Made in genuine Yorkshire squares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't get that one out there.
Well, brilliant. Amazing, John. I've really loved having that chat.
Dave, it's been great.
Oh,
I mean, even more fun than I thought it would be. And I'm
really?
sorry if I've
Good.
blathered on.
No, it's brilliant. So when I say what's timing, it's difficult to know. You saying that means something, and it's good. You know, that's a good, honest answer. You don't have to have an answer. You know these things, but you don't have to have an answer to all these things. So it's great. And also, I like these things to be like someone's overhearing a chat in a pub, not.
Yeah, it's a bit loose.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And I think, oddly, in terms of the pink stuff that I thought, I might mention that, they have, quite by accident, most of them.
They popped up. What did you miss? Or what?
Well, I mean, I thought it was going to be much more advertising focused, but so there were probably.
Well, normally I sort of
and
abandoned.
thank God I
this a
don't
bit.
work in it, because I would be fired. I wouldn't get any work, would I? There's a really interesting, like the one with Alan dressed as a squirrel, you know.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things you discover with Alan. He's a very, very good straight actor.
Yeah.
He's giving it everything. He's dressed this stupid squirrel thing, and on the end there was a piece about whatever offer they were making Abbey National in terms of 6% a year APR or whatever it was, and in order to get that through, there had to be an enormous number of legals on the end,
yeah.
With a lot of, exceptions and so on. There was so much, you basically blocked the whole shot.
Yeah.
And it looked ridiculous. And somebody, because again, we used to get on very well with the client, said, somebody had an insight. Like I'm sure Paul Felwick would have had insights about Barclaycard as it started taking root. But and I apologise to him if he's listening that it's just my story. That's the way I remember it. But it was definitely Michael Palin was in there when I got it. And they didn't, definitely the boys didn't have the idea for Rowan. But with the squirrel one is there was an offer in there with the legals, and somebody had the very clever idea of just take the offer out. Don't say what we're offering. By this time, everyone said, oh, it's another great ad with Alan being silly. So they took out the offer, they could take off the legals, and it was one of the most successful ads ever. And all it was, he's just dressed as a squirrel doing the squirrel dance. He's very annoyed, and he's had to get a new agent. Yeah. But what happens is, what do you take away from it? Abbey National have got a sense of humour. How unusual. Exactly. What other building society has got one of those, that it did follow on after that. And it's warm, and it's not pretentious, and they're not trying to make claims that they can't really substantiate. Nobody cares about 6% APR anyway. They don't even know what APR is.
And also, to the viewer, they're assuming I've got a sense of humour and that I'm not thick.
Yeah.
So that's a better relationship than, that busload of, I can't remember how you described it, as if it's for a coach load of
parties,
old women from wherever. Yeah. You think, well, it's like they're talking to me like I'm an intelligent human being with a sense of humour, so that's good. I prefer them already because they're not patronising. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
I think when I looked at some, I've been looking at ads for 4 hours at least today, which is quite exhausting, and is the journey, because some of them are painful, because you remember that was the shoot that went horribly wrong, or that was the thing where so nearly good, and other times.
Biggest discovery that you thought, actually, I've forgotten that, or that's much better than I thought.
Well, Henry Winterman's was one of them.
Yeah,
actually, I thought that's a really properly good piece of work. There isn't anything wrong with it for what it is, which is a cigar ad. And it's also, the thing is, I was the casting's very good, and a lot of my ads are very well cast. And I remember all the times I would sit there, after the first 20 actors, you think something's gone wrong with me. I obviously have lost my sense of taste or judgment, because none of them seem quite right to me, and I would panic, thinking, what's happened? Because I don't know if you know the story, when casting Queenie in Blackadder.
No.
Miranda was the 41st actress I saw.
Oh, you're kidding,
none of them
really?
seemed right, and she walked in, she'd obviously been up all night, her hair was a mess, she hadn't got any makeup on, and within 2 lines, that's her fun.
That's almost the best, I would say, almost the best piece of casting in the whole of Blackadder. That's just absolutely amazing.
But again, it's undeniable, if you just keep your nerve, don't accept second best, go on, beyond the pain barrier, beyond the fear barrier, and then something will happen.
I tell you what, I was surprised at when I went through them all, how varied they were.
Yes.
Some were like, let's say, the what's his name? Emo
Phillips.
Emo Phillips was almost like, God, I can't think of his name. What's his name? Who did Beetlejuice and that stuff?
Yes,
stylistically,
weird,
and they're all kind of quite different. They're all visually very different.
I'm very pleased you say that, but here's the weird thing: when I was doing it,
Jeff Goldblum stuff is a different flavour again.
Yeah. But people would say, I saw none of your ads, Lloydie, last night. And I said, how do you know it was mine? So it couldn't have been anyone else. So, but that used to really annoy me when you've got something as different as they were. But that's because I think it's my truth. Do you know what I mean? The ones that I'm fond of is, nobody else could do it in quite that way, and I don't know why.
But visually, they're often very different worlds, I thought. I mean, agencies always have that problem that they all say, we have no house style, we do whatever's appropriate. Yeah. And yet, you can kind of tell with something the way it's made. Yes, you
usually can, yeah.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks again, John. That was brilliant.